At lunchtime as well today, we've got a power lunch which is all to do with fruit. The South African fruit industry is an important part of our agricultural economy, I suppose. In the studio with me now is Riel Malan, who's the MD of Fruits Unlimited, and also Jacques du Preez, who is a product manager at Hortgro. Gentlemen, thanks very much for coming in this lunchtime. Let's start with you, if we can, Riel, because I want to talk about the... Actually, no, you know what? You represent the industry, don't you? The industry as a whole. Yes. Jacques, let's start with you. How big is the fruit industry, particularly in the Cape, in terms of the South African economy? An important part?
It's a very important part of especially the Western Cape agricultural economy, and the economy as a wider part. There's about 100,000 people that we supply permanent jobs to, permanent equivalents, and also the amount of foreign capital that the fruit industry brings in is huge. We export driven, we export around about 40% of all the fruit produced in the country, or deciduous fruit, so an important part of the international or national economy.
Yeah, you're an exporter and marketer, Riel, of the product. Are we doing enough? Are we leveraging enough of our potential? Because I know that if you go to Marks and Spencer or somewhere like that in the United Kingdom, you will pick up a packet of fruit, and often it might be from South Africa.
Yeah. Look, depending on who you're referring to that's doing enough, I think the South African industry is very competitive, and it's an old industry. The first product was exported at the turn of the century to the UK specifically, so I think the connection with the UK has been well established over a very long time. As a country, I think the industries are industry bodies that is doing a lot. Unfortunately, I don't think we are getting a lot of support from the DTI and various other government organisations at the moment.
What sort of extra support do you need?
Well, as an example, the DTI supported the industry until very recently to have pavilions at the various international fruit fairs. That support has been withdrawn. And if you look at the amount of people that's being employed in the industry, and if you look at the foreign exchange that's being generated by the industry, I think it's a very short-sighted direction that was taken. So as a country, I think, or as an industry, I don't think we're very happy at the moment in terms of the support we're getting from government.
Yeah. On the other hand, though, I mean, Jacques, it's a profitable industry, isn't it? Or is it a cyclical industry, just like every other commodity that we produce in South Africa?
It's certainly a cyclical industry. It's hugely capital intensive. You need a 200,000 rand, in excess of 200,000 rand to establish an orchard, and you only start bearing fruit after 4 or 5 years. So you can imagine after how many years you start breaking even. The fruits or the trees are on the ground for 20 years at least. So it's a long-term commitment and investment that producers make. So you have your ups and your downs. The years you make money, you have to save that, and the years that you lose money, you have to be able to cover those.
Why would the market, why would the fruit industry lose money? Is it because of pests? Is it because of inclement weather, something like that? Or is it because of the rand-dollar exchange rate? Why on earth would it be so cyclical?
There's an array of factors. It's climatic, lower yields, hail, not enough cold during winter, then direct competition from Chile, Argentina, Brazil, our direct competition for exports to the Northern Hemisphere, and then of course Northern Hemisphere production. We compete directly in those markets with production from themselves, as I said, as well from the Southern Hemisphere. And then of course the exchange rate, which fluctuates hugely and has a big impact on the profitability from year to year.
As an exporter, Riel, you look at the rand-dollar exchange rate probably on a daily basis. It's 8.42 at the moment. You must be thinking this is fantastic. Let's hope it goes to 9.20, so we can compete with places like Chile. How sensitive is the market to the exchange rate?
No, extremely, and of course I think the South African rand is very volatile as well. Last year at roughly the same time we were sitting at 650. So it gives you an idea of the spread that...
Were you under pressure then when it was 650?
Extremely.
Yeah.
And 3 years ago we were at 1050. So within that range to try and maintain profitability is extremely difficult. We're looking at inputs increasing dramatically for all of our producers. Energy obviously a big issue. I think oil is something that's a global phenomenon and affects everyone, but the South African electricity bill is being lifted by between 15 and 20%. So labour is increasing by 8 to 10% a year in South Africa, where many of our competitors, Peru, Egypt, are looking at far more competitive environment in which they are operating. So I definitely think the South African industry is under pressure. We are not as competitive as we used to be, and there is an array of factors as we just discussed. But you know, we're not alone on the markets anymore. Egypt, as an example, in the middle of our citrus season at the moment, and Egypt is now there in massive quantities, going towards levels of almost close to 50% of the exports of South Africa. So,
but let's bring you in on this one, Jacques. What about the quality factor between Egypt, for example, and Chile, for example, and South African fruit? I mean, are we right up there? Do we have a high quality product?
We believe that we're right at the top. We believe that our fruit is the best tasting in terms of eating quality. Chile produces higher yields than us and bigger fruit than us.
Because they pump it with pesticides or fertilizer? What is it?
It's
how do they do that?
Just the growing conditions, where the growing conditions are situated. There's only a few areas in the country that we can really profitably produce fruit. It's tough to produce fruit. You have to have enough cold units during the winter. So that determines your production that you then yield. So in terms of quality, again, looks, cosmetically, and specifically taste, we believe we're right at the top.
Okay, well, what about who eats our stuff? I mean, where does it go? I mean, if the rand goes to 8.50 to 9, for example, and stays there, Riel, then do you automatically divert a certain amount of production to different jurisdictions, and when it comes back to 7.50 to 8, then it goes more into other markets, more into the domestic market? Is it that simple?
I think the rand plays a huge role in our competitiveness in the various markets. So it does change the markets of preference. I think the retail trade is becoming, a bigger and bigger portion of the direct retail trade of the fruit marketing part of the industry. And you don't necessarily have the luxury when you're dealing with a big retailer to be in and out when you like. I mean, you are required to make a certain commitment. But inevitably there is a portion of the crop that does change direction when the environment changes, and things like oil prices determines to a large extent also your freight rate to certain markets, and that again reflects on the bottom line. So it does move from time to time. We're seeing that I think our focus on Western Europe as a country is in the last 2 years has been decreasing gradually and even faster in the last 6 to 12 months because of the opening of other markets. I think we've been very successful as a country to develop alternative markets, where 5 to 10 years ago the UK and Western Europe accounted for 50 to 70% of our trade, depending on which commodity you look at. We're now looking at markets as wide as Far East, Middle East, Russia, old Eastern European countries, Canada, and Africa is of course a growing market for South African fruit.
And will continue to be so, hopefully. Just very, very finally, Jacques, the industry is very labour intensive, and with the focus on jobs in South Africa, with a 25.2% official unemployment rate, surely the government should be doing more to promote an industry that does provide these sort of jobs.
Luckily, we do have an advocate for our industry, and specifically labour creation and job creation. It has been put on the Trevor Manuel's forum, and it is part of the plans. Luckily, initially, apparently it wasn't included, but it has been included. So I think it's definitely a big creator of jobs, and the potential is there to expand that.
Well, let's hope so. Thanks very much, gentlemen, for coming in this